Science at the University of South Africa. Professor Kotze, good afternoon to you. Do appreciate the time. We've seen so much chaos in Tshwane lately. What do I call it? Game playing. Maybe I can even say nonsense. Do you think there's any chance of it all finally coming to an end? Some stability in the capital?
Not at the moment. I think what we are seeing is sort of some of the last actions by the ANC border group in order to protect what they've won in a very, very unusual way, actually. And that started when the speaker from Cope turned around, became the mayor, and then we know what happened with him also. But I think, and as well as I think I have to add, is that some of the members of either the DA or Action SA actually participated in that. So the fact that has all been exposed now leaves very few options open for the ANC and its supporters in order to continue, because as the report has said, they do have a firm majority of about 109 seats, a majority of 2 therefore. And I think this is what the ANC and their allies now have realized, that the DA and its allies have consolidated the position, that there is no element of surprise anymore, as it has been, for example, when the mayor from Cope was elected in the first instance.
I mean, you're referring to what Michael Beaumont, the chair of Action SA, referred to as vote buying, claims that some councillors in either the DA or Action SA, perhaps Action SA more, had basically been told to vote one way or another, received money to vote one way or another. It's difficult to know how all of this is going to play out, but it also points to a lack of trust within political parties, that it seems some councillors are prepared to take money to vote in a particular way. Money from another political party, nogal.
For sure, and that is why I tend to start to compare this with the floor crossing, which had exactly the same characteristics, the same trends. And that is that persons could abandon their own party very often just for the sake of some money. And I think this is what happened to floor crossing is also what should happen in some other form to motions of no confidence. That it will have to be regulated much more tightly than what it has been done up to now. And that these abuses must become less and less possible within that. The principle of a motion of confidence should not disappear, but it should be used when it is actually necessary and justified. And I think what we are seeing now, it becomes absolutely pragmatic or opportunistic, the way in which it has been used. And it undermines the credibility of government, local government specifically, and the results of elections.
I mean, I suppose the obvious fix would be to have any election for a mayor and for a speaker, but particularly a mayor, to be held by open ballot rather than by secret ballot. I understand the arguments again, for a secret ballot, but the fact is that's where the vote buying happens. Nobody knows who was bought.
Yes, I think this is one of the possibilities. And in terms of the parliamentary tradition all over the world, to a large extent it fits into that it doesn't have to be secret. Those who are, in some cases it does fit the opposition, because then that makes it possible for walking over from the governing party's ranks to those to vote for some others. But I think in our case, the fact that it can be abused so much, that it can have these financial abuses included in it, that undermines that very fundamental principle of a secret ballot. So we will have to find a compromise between the two of it. But as it is happening at the moment, it certainly doesn't work.
There's so many other aspects to this. I mean, we've got national elections next year. We see different political parties in local government doing different things. We see the ANC and the EFF, cooperating with each other? Maybe let me use that phrase. We see smaller parties taking advantage of that cooperation. In Joburg, Tapela Ahmed from El Jamara is currently the mayor, with help from the ANC and the EFF, for example. How do you think voters see all of this? Because you could probably look at almost every political party, and they probably all have a case to answer from what's been going on in local government in the last little while.
Well, I think many will see it as a form of game playing. It's something that's not regarded as that they are serious about what they are doing. It's become very much inward looking, that it's more about themselves and their parties than about the big issues of government. And the seriousness of that is very often then seen as not their primary concern or responsibility. So it undermines the general public perception about the credibility and their trust in political systems and politicians and political parties, as well as, very, very unfortunately, also in coalition governments. I'm very much in favor of the idea that we must take coalition governments as a principle very seriously for us in South Africa. But unfortunately, at the moment, it all contributes to a very cynical look at coalition governments, very unfortunately, and therefore its future is in jeopardy if it continues like this. So I'm very much call for a much more serious a turnaround actually by politicians and political parties to take their missions and their mandates very seriously, and not to play these games that they are doing at the moment.
Do you think politicians are listening? I mean, I don't know if politicians listen to anyone anymore. We've seen all sorts of things going on. In a way, I wonder if our politicians have almost lost their fear of the voter.
I think that's the problem, that some parties over time have become so confident that they will always be there and their representatives will be there, that the simple understanding of elections and how much of a uncertain situation or even a risk situation for any party it creates, that anything should be able to happen during elections. But they've become too comfortable, I would say, too assured that they will be re-elected. But this coming election next year for national and provincial elections, I think is moving away from that. I think most parties are not sure where they stand with the electorate at the moment, and they will possibly have to pull up their socks and for the next election have to work very hard for their votes.
Professor Dirk Kotze, really appreciate the time. Thank you. Professor of Political Sciences at the University of South Africa. Of a horrible, sinking feeling. It won't be the last time we ask Professor Kotze for his understanding of what's happening in the city of Tshwane.